Hello, my name is Darren Ullman. I'm a third-year PhD student at Regent University, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you today for the Organizational Leadership Roundtable, a paper on the prerequisites to leadership-followership state exchange. The impetus for this area of study really comes from an observation rooted in the human narrative that's seen in many stories and books and movies that we are accustomed to, where an experienced or unassuming follower is exchanging roles with a leader to accomplish a critical outcome. And within that narrative, there are illustrations where the leader defers to that follower for guidance, insight, and even leadership. But one aspect about this phenomenon is that it doesn't happen every time. So what conditions must exist for this phenomenon to take place? To support this investigation, there were three areas of the literature that were investigated. One was an area of followership. Within that, there was a subset addressing followership paradigms. And then there is a study in the areas of conditions for leadership followership state exchange. We'll briefly go through each one of these. In the area of followership, one of the premises is that leaders do not exist without followers, giving a rise to follower-centric relational constructs. Also, that follower characteristics impact follower relationships, and that followership outcomes are jointly developed via followership behavior that are formed by the follower's characteristics and the leadership behavior. As you drill down into the study of followership, into followership paradigms, three paradigms are relevant in this field of study. One is dealing with the leader-follower, which was the original area of study in leadership, which is a very leader-centric perspective, where the leader is superior and initiates all the actions, and in contrast, the follower is an inferior entity in that relationship. As organizational leadership studies progressed, a leadership followership organizational position paradigm developed, and that it was really looking at the hierarchical perspective in understanding the power relationships between the leader and the follower. So it was very similar to the leader-centric perspective. The area of interest for this study was a development in a leadership followership state paradigm. In this paradigm, the leader or follower role is a state or condition, and a person occupies that state or condition based on the present circumstances being faced. When you look at the conditions for leadership followership exchange, a couple of theories come into play. One is a leader-follower trade theory, and here leaders and followers exchange their functions to develop their intrapersonal perspectives, foster interpersonal relationships, and maximize mutual effectiveness. Malakian proposed that certain circumstances must exist for this leader-follower trade to occur. To support that, research into psychological distance between the leader and the follower and the perception of proactive followers by leaders provide a starting point for deeper investigation. So considering the leader-member exchange theory, the leader-followership state exchange, and the contextual factors of proactive follower behavior, the research question that was developed for this study is what conditions must exist to exchange the states of leadership and followership. The method employed for this study was qualitative in nature. The interview questions were grounded from previous research, and there were four primary questions as are outlined on the slide here. And then there was follow-up questions based on those answers as to why some of those positions were taken by the participants. The participants in this study involved 5 small business leaders, all from the Fargo-Moorhead area in the North Dakota, upper Minnesota area. They had all experienced or observed leader-follower role exchanges in their course of their career. Each interview was roughly 25 to 40 minutes. All were recorded and transcribed in order to do the data analysis. The data analysis involved a two-state coding process. There were 3 iterations of the initial, a combination of the initial and in vivo coding. One view of the interview data was looking at an environmental perspective. A second was looking for leader characteristics. A third view was looking for follower characteristics. One additional iteration of process coding was then conducted, and that focused on the relationship between the leader and the follower in the examples given by the participants. Then a second phase of coding identified the data clusters and the associated themes. The findings of the summary are outlined in this table below. There were 4 basic, of the 4 basic iterations, the various themes are shown in their respective columns, and we will go over briefly the findings within each one of these. From the follower characteristic themes, one of the main findings was the emergence of selfishness as a negative impact on the ability to have a employee or a leader-follower exchange. In the sense of the follower, it was a sense of unbounded ambition or entitlement as how the selfishness presented. On a positive sense, aspects of putting in the work and developing trustworthiness identified the follower as a candidate for the role exchange. Once identified, continuing to present a humble and respectful and teachable attitude enhanced that perception of the follower as a potential successor for the leader. Then the follower's situational and cultural awareness of the leader's motivations and reasoning was also deemed a positive input to initiating an exchange. From the leader characteristic themes, selfishness also presented, but in this case, it was seen as an insecurity that would lead to defensiveness. Where there was exchange taking place, a leader would demonstrate openness and teachableness, presented as the ability to recognize and learn from the expertise of the follower. There was also a desire of these leaders to invest in followers because they would maintain an air of confidence in their existing position. A leader that had awareness of their own limitations and was able to discern the strengths of others led to matching capabilities with the appropriate opportunities. From an environmental perspective, there were 2 basic types of themes that emerged. One was involved circumstantial, which effectively identified the catalysts that would initiate follower-leader exchange. And so in this case, a leader could be in a new role and unaware of some of the things that the follower may know. The leader could be overloaded and looking to delegate or get assistance, or a leader is actually seeking a successor. Evincible or observable conditions that would foster the acceptance of the exchange really had to deal about finding the appropriate time and place for these employee engagements or follower engagements to the leader to occur. If they were attempted in the wrong time or place, it would then become a negative. And then another factor was if the follower was completing objectives that were important to the leader, then that would set up the conditions for a leader-follower role exchange to take place. Finally, in the relationship characteristic themes, there was an element of mutual trust that was developed over time, mutual respect that was either experienced from shared experiences or led to shared experiences. Clear and authentic communication exists between the 2 parties. And one aspect that was present was that followers who looked like the leader or had a sense of compatibility were more apt to proceed with a role exchange. So when you take all of those factors of the 4 basic themes or the 4 basic views that were looked at and all of the themes. They're arranged in this table, which basically starts on the upper left and flows down to the lower right, that kind of brings you through a relationship. And in the center of this is this this aspect of selfishness and humility that really is at the nexus of whether a role exchange is to occur or not. To speak on this a little bit further, what emerged from this study was a sense of humility that was necessary from both the leader and the follower simultaneously. If either one of them were not compatible on that scale and were not meeting somewhere in the middle, then a role exchange would not take place. Additional and potential mediating factors that would determine the successful nature of a role exchange involved the communication that was present between the leader and the follower, whether there was an affirming or encouraging climate primarily established by the leader, and whether the follower would present alignment with the leader's worldview within the organization. Opportunities for future research then would be replication of this study, which could involve doing additional small business leaders, but also extending into corporations to determine if dynamics would adjust. There could also be variants to the studies that could look at factors like gender or culture. And then the emerging topic out of this study is exploring the selfishness relationship to leader-follower exchange, which could, there wasn't a lot of literature that was specifically pointed to that particular topic. And so that was a finding that could warrant from concept development moving forward. So I want to thank you for taking the time and interest in learning a little bit about the prerequisites to leadership and followership at a state exchange.